Epik Mellon podcast, conversations with the real humans behind broadband networks, cybersecurity, and the future of communications. Brought to you by QA Cafe.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of which the numbers I will no longer say. I think it's 30. I think this is 30 of the Epik Mellon podcast, where we try to humanize the people behind broadband networks, cybersecurity, and the future of communications, which you just heard if you heard the intro to this podcast while you're starting it. I am your host, Jason Walls from QA Cafe, and this is Craig Thomas, and he's a good friend of mine, and he is also the CEO of the Broadband Forum, which which is an organization largely responsible for half of my career. Um, so yeah, I wanted to get Craig on for a couple reasons. One, because there's been a whole lot of stuff going on, and there was just a trade show last week, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about that we've talked about on the show before, but I also wanted some people to sort of get to know you a little bit and how you got here and how we can, I don't know, how we do what we do and why there's so much mess in how the sausage is made behind internet standards.
The sausage tastes good. That's all that matters, isn't it?
Yes, it does, right? And you never know. Tier 69, it tastes good. All right. Because this podcast is entirely funded by QA Cafe, the views expressed by myself or by Craig do not reflect those of QA Cafe or its ownership. And the same goes with Craig for the Broadband Forum. So this can be pretty loose. And I know there's a lot of stuff to say in an official capacity, but I'm gonna trust. I trust you. I trust you.
I'll try to keep it honest, but any views is definitely my own and not represented by everyone inside the Broadband Forum.
Oh, can you imagine? That would be a mess.
It'd be great, wouldn't it? I speak.
We're committing antitrust already. We just started the show. Yeah. This show is brought to you by the great products at QA Cafe, including CD Router, the fully automated test platform for broadband gateways, Wi-Fi devices, and other CPE, and is the official test platform of several certification programs at the Broadband Forum. Also, Passport, which is our fully automated test solution for end devices, IoT, smart home, set-top boxes, those sort of things, which is as simple as connecting it, selecting a bunch of tests, running it, and finding out if your product is doing what it's supposed to do before it ends up as a bad review somewhere. And then we also have on the network analysis side, we have CloudShark, which we've built to allow people to work together with packet captures way better than you ever could before without risking security leaks and being able to level up those newbies a lot easier than you could before. And also Packet Viewer, which is essentially the guts of CloudShark that you can use to integrate into your own solution to present clear, useful views of packet captures in your cloud managed networking and cybersecurity solutions without risking those captures leaving boundaries of trust. That's the quick version. All right, Craig.
Yes.
So Craig has had a journey. Craig came to the Broadband Forum, which for those of you who have been listening to the show for a while is one of the main standards bodies that I am involved in. And like I said, if I hadn't stood up 20 years ago and said some stuff as a lowly grad student about Tier 69 at a Broadband Forum meeting, I wouldn't be where I am right now. But Craig, you started what? You came in as the marketing director how long ago?
Only 4 years. It feels like a lifetime, but it's only 4 years.
Oh my God. That's right. Because when you came on, it was in the middle of COVID. And so we would joke about how we'd never actually seen you in person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So
Yeah.
for the first 18 months, I was working with this extended team that I never actually got face to face with.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's crazy. And then it was just last year that we shuffled everything around and now you're in charge.
For my sins or for the Broadband Forum sins, I'm not too sure which one, but no.
Yeah, right. There's a reason we always say my condolences, not congratulations. And I say that lovingly, but I think it's kind of interesting to explain to people that that these organizations are nonprofits.
Mm.
They're effectively run by volunteers, right? It's not like the board of directors gets paid, or right? We all get paid by our own companies, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to people about this recently. It's like it's kind of a weird experience because I've been involved through all the companies I've worked for. Happens to only be two, but Tim Spetz has obviously worked for like 20, but doing the same thing in standards at the same time. And like it's we are volunteers, even though we're getting paid to do our jobs that hypothetically produce value for our companies, right? I have a very direct line of proof that that's true because I end up being involved with making technologies that we test, and then people buy our stuff to test those things. So that's a very clear line, but I don't know if it's always clear for everybody.
And it's not, there's many different reasons why people and companies join. It's not just to contribute to the work. It may be to be part of certification programs. It may be just the networking opportunities or just to keep an eye on everything that's going on in standards.
Yeah,
And often
yeah,
when I get asked, well, how many people work for the Broadband Forum? And I say, well, 7. No, 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 really. How many work for the Broadband Forum? But if you look at all of our members, they probably, and it's totally inaccurate, but the headcount that they second to our work is in the
yeah.
hundreds of people.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
yeah,
Right,
and
and
the value they bring is different to each company, but yeah.
right. And it has to work that way, right? And it's funny because it's not unusual. I remember going to what was it? They renamed themselves, but it was originally the CTA, the Consumer Technology Association.
Yeah.
They're the ones that put on CES, the biggest trade show in the goddamn world, and their staff was like 7 people.
How is that possible?
Yeah. I was like, so yeah, it's like I think it's important for people to understand that there is this sort of weird it's a culture, right? For us, it's a culture of things that are making the internet go.
Mm-hmm.
And if people didn't find value in participating, then there was a lot of stuff that wouldn't have happened and wouldn't work.
It wouldn't be here. It'll still just be somebody's on back of somebody's notepad somewhere.
Yeah, right. Literally.
Yeah.
So we brought you on as marketing director. I say we. I just volunteered for the program. Uh, Broadband Forum brought you on as marketing director, and where did that pitch come from? What were you thinking at the time
Well,
before you knew the horrible truth?
I've been working in service providers and vendors since dial-up modem days, whereas remote access
Yeah,
servers was the first product management job I ever had. Dial-up remote access servers. So I've known DSL forum, ATM forum, and phone relay forum in its different permutations for a long, long time, but mostly on the back of responding to RFIs.
right.
Um,
Oh, cool.
So, we used to have the deep dive techie engineers that would get involved in the writing and contributions and the standards work. But from my side, from a product management and then a product marketing basis, it was always from the RFI basis and do we comply? And if not, do we push back on an R&D resource ourselves to comply? And then I did some consultancy and it just wasn't for me. International consultancy wasn't for me.
It's
And
rough.
yeah, and it's the industry. I knew the previous CEO, and he rang me up and said, "Hey, fancy joining?" And it was the right time, right place, and here I am.
Cool, 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 cool. Are you enjoying yourself so far?
It's weird, and I know this sounds corporate speak or whatever, but um, it kind of feels like giving back to an industry that's been really good to me. You
Oh,
know,
all right. Yeah.
standards. You're never going to get paid what you were, but it's not. It's a career move of it's been good to me, this industry, and working with standards. Yes, there's politics involved and everything, not just inside the BBF, but with other SDOs and tech bodies. But generally, we're all pushing in the same direction. So it feels like giving back, which is, I don't know, it sounds really nice answer, but it's true.
Oh, no, I mean, that's cool. That is cool. I mean, it's funny because it's like I've come from the exact opposite direction, right? Because I've been doing this the whole time from when I was working for a university to now, right?
Mm.
Um, so I wonder if other people feel that way, you know. But it's you can tell, right? And I think especially because we were just talking with I won't go into details because that conversation was obviously um, under wraps, but we were talking to a research firm um, yesterday. John Blackford and I were, um, and the information they were giving us was about confirming a lot of our assumptions about the success of the stuff that we're working on. I'm like, oh well, that's a good feeling.
But doesn't it take someone brave enough to say, this is where the industry is going, or this is why we're building these standards, for everyone else to come out of their shells and say, yeah, exactly, that's what we think too. But it takes that first
Yeah,
brave person.
geez, Craig, it's like pulling teeth. Like, you know, good Lord. It's like, what is everybody afraid of? And you're right. Once it happens, you know, it really is sort of like it's like a peer pressure thing. It feels like, right? It's like, and you remember, I mean, you know, I had forgotten from before because when I got into standards, the one that we were working on mostly, Tier 69, was kind of like the ball was already rolling by the like when I started. Like it was still in its infancy,
Mm.
but in creating its successor, USP, I had no idea how frustrating the constant questions of like, well, who else is doing it? Well, who else is doing it?
It takes someone.
Constantly.
uh, and it may seem to be the most sensible idea in the world, and why would anybody disagree? But you still need that person to stand up and say, first off, this is the reason. This is why we're
Yeah.
doing it. And then everyone, flocks together. We're not sheep, but we're all pushing in the same direction and have the same reason. So
Yeah.
it's exciting.
Yeah. Well, so in dealing with working for those companies and dealing with, you know, RFIs specifically, those are requests for
Information.
information
Yeah.
as opposed to RFPs, which are
RFP.
requests for proposals for
Yeah.
those who don't know what those acronyms mean. Um, so a big company will put one of those out and then a bunch of people who want to sell their shit to them will fill it out and make sure that they're meeting those requirements, and then there's a bidding process and all that, right?
Mm.
it you can imagine that that's how the government does things too, but it's way slower and more awful, and I don't know that I would ever want to work in that in that space. um but so being from that side of things, like you you're intimately familiar with the proof that those companies need and the pushback that they get from departments that are totally out of your control. Like, what is that like? Like from now being on the total other side,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, it depends on the standard and what they're using it for. You often get from the operator environment that they'll write every possible standard that's ever been written to man and include it in their RFIs and requests for information. Um, but what you're getting increasingly, when I was first in the industry, God, over 30 years ago, um, you could pretty much solve a single vendor solution. So our standards at that stage was a nice to have, but wasn't imperative because I'm going to go all
Oh
the way.
yeah, right, right,
Yeah. Now, I don't know one significant service provider who's going for a single vendor strategy. So standards becomes more and more important, and therefore the necessity to make sure you comply. So at least you give the operators the flexibility of choosing one, two, or three, whether it's chipset vendors, whether it's COVID hitting us again, or whatever it may be. Who knows what the reason's going to be? It's more important than it's ever been. Um,
right.
and then you add to that the amount of new operators that are entering the market or have done over the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh really?
Yeah. When you're looking at the number of fixed line operators using BEAD money in the US or EU money or here in the UK, you know, when we had three operators, we've now got so many different altnets on top that have used government money for fiber deployments or even
Right,
wholesale. Standards becomes more important because we don't know if there's going to be consolidation. And if
right.
that happens, Well, I want a network I know that's at least going to work with the one I'm consolidating it into.
Oh yeah, that's super important. I was just talking to Massimo from Z Factor, right? So it's for those who didn't listen to the last show. Z Factor is the digital marketing firm that um, both Craig and I use for Broadband Forum, and I use
Really?
it for QA Cafe.
They're proper
Um,
big, though.
all right, I feel like we all have to grow them out. Like you can never match Massimo's beard. Uh, so he is their company essentially got bought out by a company that is doing a lot of those that is helping a lot of those operators that are coming on the scene in the US and Canada, right, come online. So is it that kind of thing where it's like the the co-ops that are suddenly becoming for-profit companies and all that stuff? Is that where they're coming out of the woodwork, or are people just literally being like, "Hey, let's start more ISPs"?
Well, no. It's ones that have found the opportunity, especially with BEAD money for fiber deployments. Both that's in the US, Canada have something similar, and we've seen a lot more in Europe as well. And the business model is different for a new startup fiber network provider than it is a traditional provider. And there's this land grab. I must pass as many homes and grab as many new customers as I can quickly, and then I'll
Right.
worry about the revenue later, type of thing. And we're getting to the stage, and different markets are maturer than others, but in Europe, there's a lot of agreement that there's going to be consolidation of those new alt nets into larger ones, whether it's capital investments or some of the traditional operators that buy them.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's good. It wasn't always that way.
No,
Yeah.
we were selling to the same three or four companies wherever we were, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. And it's interesting, at least, obviously I know Europe is going to experience this too, but most acutely in the United States, um, fixed wireless access is suddenly like it's
Rampant so quickly.
so fast.
Yeah, yeah.
And I keep going back to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where both T-Mobile and Verizon were running Super Bowl ads. 30-second Super Bowl, millions of dollars, both for their fixed wireless access stuff. And the other operators out there are legitimately threatened by this. And some of their advertising is downright comical, but like it it's so bad. I don't want to I love those guys. I really do. And the company that I'm talking about has done a very good job in becoming more standardized and addressing their concerns about customer satisfaction and all that, right? And so they're on top of it. But some of the ads I've seen to counter the fixed wireless access stuff is just hilariously awful, right? Like there was one that was like, "Don't buy T-Mobile because it will make your trees ugly." I'm not joking. Like that's literally what it was.
I love that. That's great.
Like, don't compete on a high quality network.
But it's not going away. FWA, that there is going to be three options in the US. You can add satellite as a fourth one, but they're valid. FWA, DOCSIS, fiber. And the great news for the consumer is if you've got more than one of those in your serving area, there's going to be price competition for that broadband.
Right,
But on
right.
the flip side, that's bad news for the operators. So, it's
Is
the
it
whole.
though? Is it
Well,
though? Because here's the thing, right? Because you say price competition, but and this is a great segue, right? So we'll talk about the most important thing that we are always talking about right now, and we can talk about Network X from last week too. Um, it's you say price competition, but it's also just sheer customer satisfaction competition, right? Like to the point where people are willing to pay more money for better stuff, even if it's not as cheap as the next guy, right? And that better stuff is beyond just network connectivity, right?
Mm.
And the entire industry is realizing this truth that they can do more stuff with the stuff at their disposal, right?
That's a lot of stuff in one sentence, you know that.
Yes.
It is, and the quality, but I think the fiber providers and the government in the US have done a great job of saying this is why fiber's great.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of, excuse my terminology, penis envy of what type of broadband connection you've got.
Yeah.
But at some state, as long as the quality of the fiber connection, the reliability, the always on, the Wi-Fi connection, and conversations you and I have had of, in the end of the day, it's more going to be about the Wi-Fi connection than the internet connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the subscriber is going to wake up and say, I don't need 10 gigabits yet. Especially as I went on the forum before this Network X event, I went on all the chat forums and people sort of, questioning should they upgrade to multi-gigabit broadband. And 95% of people said no.
These were consumers asking that question.
Consumers asking that question. And the question, I upgraded to a 5 gig, and my Zoom call is still having connection problems. Well, that's because it's not the speed.
Right.
And consumers are
and if
up.
you ask some people who we work with, it might even be worse because you have a 5 gig connection.
We can't talk about that one. But it's true, and the consumer isn't dumb. But when you then look at the value add of what you want to do with that broadband on top, we have to educate, first of all, the consumer before we ever get to the financial director at the operator to say you need to upgrade your network.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I do think we're on the cusp of something which is really different for broadband. But you've talked about this a lot in your podcast already.
Yeah. And that is this idea that the residential network and the access network are an application platform, right? And they always have been.
Mm.
It's just there's just been some like little pieces that were missing to fully realize that. And now it really can be the case. And I've talked about this a ton of times on the show where I like to talk. It's exactly what you said. I like to talk about what the consumer thinks, right? What do they think? And for one thing, and Massimo and I talked about this. The word broadband is just terrible, and it sucks that we're still using it because nobody knows what that means. Nobody uses that term. They say internet access or whatever, right? Or the Wi-Fi. But the idea that almost everything we do, especially after COVID, almost everything we do now and in the future is about that network, hands down, right? All the media we consume, all the work that we do, all of the care that we receive, all the connections that we make to human beings is all about that residential access network, right? And because of that, now the idea is that the owner of that network are the ISPs, and they are suddenly being thrust into this world where they should be taking ownership of that because it's theirs, and there are things that now it can do all kinds of stuff. Now people expect it to do all kinds of stuff, so they're starving for somebody to offer it to them, right?
And it's interesting because I get difference of opinion wherever I go in the world, because this event, the Network X Americas event I was at last week, one of the key topics was AI and ML and how well positioned are the broadband service providers to own AI and ML, or what's the role for them there, versus whether it's Amazon, Google, whoever's in your home that could well have that jump on the competition already. And I was looking at this and I was asking the question, there's this term around at the moment about that ISP has to become the techno provider. And I kind of
Oh,
hate.
what were they trying to say at Network X
Yeah, yeah,
Europe last year?
yeah,
A
exactly.
techco instead
Yeah,
of a telco?
yeah, yeah. And I was thinking about it, and yeah, but isn't the opportunity for the ISP or the service provider to be the trusted provider more than the technology provider?
Hmm.
So that they'll do all of the work for you, so that if you want to bring this application into your home, they've tested it, it's secure, it's safe, the network's ready to run it,
Right.
you know. And I'm not going to take any more AI ML intuitive information away from you other than what I need to run that service,
Right. Right.
compared to the mistrust of AI and ML in so many homes. I
Yeah.
was talking to a young guy, and he goes, "I don't care. I've got nothing to hide from Google or Amazon. I've got absolutely nothing to hide." And I said, "And when you have kids?" And he looked at me and went, "Different story. Then I
Yeah.
don't want them listening on anything. When I've got my children in the house or whatever it may be." And I think that's true. In my generation, there's massive mistrust of AI and ML.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone talking to me about the wart on my nose, and suddenly I'm getting flooded by wart cream adverts or whatever it may be.
To a degree, I don't mind it. Right.
I do.
When I do talk about something and suddenly it appears on Facebook, I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can. Thanks. But yeah, if it's super sensitive, absolutely. And we don't have to go down the road of the trust of AI of learning language models.
No.
Period, right? But you know me, I'm a big advocate of them.
And you know me, I'm not.
But when we talk about it in the context of that, you know, network as a platform, we're talking about the computing resources, right? And where they're supposed to be best had, and what can function when the connection is down, and that all kinds of stuff. And what's cool about the 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 broadband gateway, right? Even I said it. The thing that your ISP gives you, or that you bought at the store, that is your Wi-Fi router, is way more powerful than it ever was in the past, and is now effectively a better computer than it ever was before. And so now it can do those things that it couldn't do in the past, and it is very well suited to doing those things because it is able to know everything about what your networking is doing, because it is the network, right?
It absolutely is the network, but also th- that value needs to be explained not just to the consumer, but to governments and regulators, etc., as well.
Mm, okay.
When you're getting big pushes from government to reduce the carbon footprint and the energy consumption of a
Oh
network,
yeah.
and that's pushing the operator in one direction to say, well, I've got to make things as dumb, as stupid, as less power intensive as possible. And then what does that mean? They're putting more IoT devices and smart devices in the same home that has to have more compute power. So to the consumer, the energy bill is actually going up, not down. But
Right.
that's where this discussion has to happen greater and bigger. It's not just the benefits of having greater compute power, containerization in the home gateway, whatever device you want to call it, is bigger than just the service provider. The opportunity is bigger than just the service provider. If I can
Right.
start talking to the smart home device manufacturers and say, hey, put your compute elements in my home gateway and reduce your manufacturing cost. Well, there's a
Right.
great discussion to be had there. Um, we'll see. It's neighbor talking to neighbor in many ways, and building that community.
And what's kind of interesting, and that I was kind of just thinking about. So it's almost like this is, I keep saying that it's happening because there's sort of this perfect storm of a number of circumstances technologically that are making this possible, but also from the end user's perspective and what they expect and how they expect to interact with the stuff that they have. I think we're reaching the limits of the smartphone, not in terms of what it can do, but what people want to do with it, literally physically, right? Because picking it up and turning it on and installing an app and doing all that stuff, right? It's like we're reaching the use case limits, right? because in theory, and this has happened in the past and kind of is still pushed a little bit, especially on the smart home side, is to use that as the hub for everything, right? But I don't. I think we're reaching the limits of that, not just technologically, but from a sheer like cultural
Usability.
like the way that people use stuff, right? 'Cause in theory, you could do that. You could do that. You could have this whole thing be the smart hub if you really wanted to do that, right?
So here's a question: is it the smart hub, or looking at it from a TV perspective, is it the remote control and you still need the TV?
Right. And I think we've reached the point where people realize that this is just the remote control, and maybe it's not that great of one.
Well, if you look at the future, when you're inside the home, and we're already moving in that way, everything has to be voice activated.
Yeah. Oh
And
man,
yeah,
every time something is voice capable, it just makes me happy.
yeah, and that should be whatever AP where it follows you in every room. I don't want to. I've got terrible eyesight, and honestly, I have to take my glasses off to navigate my iPhone. I want to just say, hey, automatically, I want to turn the temperature down. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
And it's done. I don't want to have to take my phone out of my pocket and lift my glasses up. But yeah, generally speaking, the smart gateway just makes so much sense. It's the right place in the right part of the network, in the right part of the home that can connect to every single device in the home, irrespective of what operating systems they're working or whatever it may be.
And irrespective of what connection technologies they're using.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a discussion in its own right, I guess. But it should be agnostic, as you say, completely, because the consumer doesn't care. As long as it works, the consumer just doesn't care.
If it's ever taken one theme oth- other than that human authenticity is awesome and how we get shit done. If you've ever taken one theme out of this show, it's that the consumer doesn't care. They just want it to work.
Damn consumers. Yeah,
We are. You and I, we're consumers. We just want it to work.
yeah. And I love it. I love it. I love it to pieces. That my job involves the way I work in life as well, and the way I live inside my home. But it's also that foreboding every time that I should know how optimal some of these applications that I'm running in the house, smart home applications, whatever I'm running on my PCs and my TVs, etc. And know that frustratingly know there's a better way, but also frustrating know that unless somebody does it for me, I'm not doing it.
No, absolutely, right. And it's funny with smart home stuff that we're in this stage where it is DIY, and the people that are buying that stuff are the people that pride themselves on DIY, right? But I don't want to do that. I don't. It used to be that way with networking too.
It did. I remember the days of token ring versus Ethernet. So that's how old I am. And the benefits of token ring and why Ethernet will never take up. And now look at us, and we're talking about. I was at this Network X, and they were talking about Wi-Fi 7. And all these people that have invested in so many additional Wi-Fi APs inside their home, and now with Wi-Fi 7, well, it looks like you can pull a lot of them down. Actually, you don't need them at all. It's a waste of investment. So I think the user experience is going to be better. I don't know about voice activation when you haven't got many APs in the home anymore, but we are getting somewhere. I mean, the biggest.
Well, and you know what's wild about that is that that's a significant from if you're thinking about it. Remember the survey.
Mm.
So to catch people real quick on that, last year we did the Broadband Forum commissioned a survey about a whole bunch of different topics, largely about the protocols that we make about USB and what operators are considering about the services that they're deploying. And do you remember that when they were talking about whole home coverage, the primary answer to the question of what to do about it was to throw more access points at it. And what is nuts about that is that everybody who did that and has invested in that, and if what they were saying last week about Wi-Fi 7 is true, then like, wow, that investment just happened because going from Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 7 was what, 2 years?
Mm-hmm. Once again, it's a 5G versus 6G versus mobile phone. When are you going to start making money if you keep after replacing all your Wi-Fi access points? And it's a U-turn. When I bought my gig fiber service, one of the benefits of buying a gig instead of 500 megas, I got 3 access points, not 2. And if I bought the basic one, I only got 1 access point. And now we're saying, no. With our service,
They actually used it as like their selling point.
Yeah, absolutely. And now it's going to be a U-turn. Well, with our service, you only need 1. Throw away those 3 that you had before, or 4. So yeah, that's our industry, though.
You can see it now. Get our Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi 6 makes your house ugly.
Yeah, well, what's the inside of the house replacement to a tree? I don't know. Your potted plants, whatever it may be.
No, but you joke, but I was thinking that like we should start a company that makes good-looking router enclosures or good-looking routers that hear me out, that are either ceiling fans or potted plants, because that's literally the best place to put your hanging from the ceiling in the middle of the room is the best Wi-Fi. So why not encourage people to do it?
Instead of these devices that I'm sure the manufacturers decide to make them look like rockets or something alien or whatever, that don't fit in any decor going at all.
We used to call the Netgear the Wolverine. But to that point, though, like I'm interested to see the future from the consumer's perspective, and if it is true that this thing becomes more of an important piece of the experience of a homeowner, right? To the point that it is more like an appliance than a thing you got from your ISP. What is it going to look like? What are we going to call it? How are people going to interact with it? What is the awareness going to be like? Because I know what it's like now, right?
There's that thing in the corner, and I'm not too sure what I do with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to be as invisible as possible.
Yeah. Does it though? What if it really is the hub of everything you do, right? What if it really is your set-top box for your TV, your smart home hub for all your smart home stuff, your voice assistant, and all of your networking stuff, right? What is that thing? What if it also talks back to you like Alexa, right? Is it now like your best friend that knows everything about you and is communicating with AI? No, just kidding.
But we want something to show for our money, even if our voice is our interface, and therefore, does it need to have a screen? Does it need to have anything at all? Because you could argue that every device is turning into an LCD screen, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm going to be spending $100 a month on something, I kind of want something that shows me that I'm spending $100 on a month for something.
Yes, right.
I'll leave that to the marketing gurus out there who'll decide exactly what these things should be and shouldn't be. But I kind of like the idea that it's just a screen on one wall, and everything else, my interface is the spoken word, and I kind of like that idea.
I agree. That would be the best experience for me too, I think. And the better that speech can get is just makes me happy.
Well, voice recognition don't. I just got a new car, and it's got no way of working out what I'm saying.
Really?
I've given up on trying to speak to the blooming thing.
I mean, you are British, so maybe.
Well, for some reason, every instruction I give it says looking for a chemist. What?
Does
I
it
don't know.
does it know something more about you than you do, Craig?
Probably, yeah.
Oh man. So anyway, there's just a couple other things that I wanted to hit on. I wanted to um, talk really quickly um, about how our physical standards meetings have changed, and how it is that people still find it valuable to go there, right? Um, and then also just how we have sort of seen these cool little startup application vendors come out of the woodwork and come to us and be excited about it, right?
And that's really exciting. But let's go to the member meetings first. So obviously we had, I don't know, 2 years, 2.5 years of virtual meetings because of COVID and travel restrictions, etc. And we proved really, really well that we can do our day-to-day work on virtual calls, which gave
Hmm.
us, which has given us a great opportunity, I think, in the member meetings, to recognise the value of face-to-face again,
Right,
reminding
right.
nothing beats those discussions, and often people are working for competitors, but when we get together, we're all pushing in a common direction, which is
Hmm. Hmm.
valuable, and building those relationships. But it also gives us a chance to move those face-to-face meetings, which, let's be honest, costs our members a lot of money to go um, to look at a wider picture beyond the day-to-day work that we're doing in the Broadband Forum itself and standards, so that we can look at new topics, new opportunities, where not just the what are we doing for the next 6 months, but what is the focus we should be having for the next 12, 18, 24 months discussions.
Right.
We
Yeah.
brought in
Yeah.
town halls, which I think have initially been really successful, and we recommend and really would appreciate anyone who has a key topic they would want for an open town hall discussion to come to us and let us know. But then it gives us the opportunity beyond that to do things like birds of a feather and to look at pictures of saying, well, a lot of our work is increasingly not sitting in one particular work area, so that we can
Right.
have those cross-group work areas. The example I use a lot is quality of experience, and how do we guarantee latency? Well,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
has to be end to end. So how
That
do
has to be
we?
everybody involved, right?
Yeah, yeah. So how do we all come together and push from an industry wide perspective to say this is how an operator can guarantee an AR session with guaranteed QoE from the data center to the Wi-Fi device
Right.
itself.
And some of
Um,
those conversations have already just been so great, like just so great to change the focus a little bit, right? And not doing the really boring stuff and saving that for other times, right? And it's the other thing that really hits home for me about the in-person meetings is what we do afterwards, right? And
mm,
so it's like just as like an incredible anecdote, right? Like last at the spring meeting that we had this year in Germany,
mhm,
we had some new folks, and immediately going out with them and not taking them out, but being authentic. Just talked about to Mossam about this, being authentic, right? So it's not like, oh, these guys are potential members of the Broadband Forum. We better take them out for dinner and drinks. It's like, no. When I walked in and talked to Randy, right? It was like I didn't know who he was. He was just walking with us, and I'm like, okay, dude, you're one of the crew now. Come on, let's go, right? And people crave that camaraderie. I really think they do. And when they experience it and they see how we have that side of things, we're talking about work when we're not working, right? And then bring it back and being able to have companies see the value of getting their point of view into the standards, or even their new stuff that they didn't consider should be standardized, probably should, and having them come to us with stuff like that. I mean, it's invaluable. And they joined it. They were like, how how is it that I can make it so that we can hang out with you more?
within 48 hours. I mean, they got over the hangover and then joined. But it is true, and it's often you'll find people joining standards bodies for one reason, and then when they're inside it, they're suddenly thinking, well, actually, there's so many other reasons why I should have joined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the quote right there. That's what we're going to use as the teaser for this episode. It's really true. That's even what happened to me. That's literally what happened to me, right? I was 25 and Matt, who was my boss at the time, was like, "Hey, Jason, there's a San Jose meeting. It's cheap. Why don't you come check things out?" And I thought I was going to go sit in the group that was talking about DSL testing. And I was like, "I'm going to go see what else is going on." And here I am,
Yeah,
and that would not have happened if I wasn't there in person. It would absolutely not have happened.
it's for individuals. It's a personable reason, for camaraderie, as you said. There's professional, furtherment of your career opportunities as well. But
Mhm.
also from a corporate perspective, you've got people who joined just to be in bus, and now suddenly their business is moving it to adjacent markets, and they're now getting involved in adjacent work areas because of that. And it's just
Right.
and it's great fun. It's a certain guy who I have utmost respect for says it's the most fun you can have in standards, and I believe
I always,
him.
I always throw that at Tim Winters, who is the IETF guy, and he's like, "Hey, you're kind of right. You're kind of right." All right. Thanks, Craig. I will. I'm going to talk to you probably very soon
Probably.
about probably a host of other things, and see you in a few weeks.
No, I enjoyed the chat. Thanks, Jason. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you enjoyed this and you want to learn more about what's going on, do hit the subscribe button so that you will hear more Epik Mellon podcast episodes as I talk to more people in the industry like Craig. Um, and by all means, check out the Broadband Forum, see what we're doing there. Um, it's no risk. It is the most fun you'll ever have in standards, and we're a very welcoming bunch. And above all, own the nerdy things that you love and have fun doing them. Thanks, Craig.